Knock, knock.
Who's there?
It's Simon Paige.
Hey, welcome, Simon. It's great to see you. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited. Big fan. So it's great
Big
to be on the
fan.
show.
I love that.
I don't think we've ever had a big fan.
That
So
makes me feel really important and superstar-like.
Maybe maybe I'm bigging you up too much. But yes, I have listened to a few sessions and yes, really, really great show.
oh, that's all right. I'll take it. Big fans. Big
Big
fans. Hopefully
fans.
there's some more big fans listening.
Yeah. Well, would you? And in all honesty, a big fan of you.
Yes.
We don't just have any old,
Any other randoms?
random on our podcast.
Just a random,
Just like you. You'll do.
just a fellow British random person. There you go.
Yes, you have the same accent. You can come on, but no, I mean seriously, a big fan of yours, Simon. I've known you and kind of, I guess I don't want to say worked with you, but kind of been in and around your influence is probably a better way to put it. For a few years in the world of big box gyms, and now working as a fitness educator through CamFit Pro. Um, but what I would really love to do is to kickstart the show with you kind of giving us a bit of an insight, I guess, into who you are, what you do, and give people listening an opportunity to connect with you, whether it's on Instagram or your website, because we kind of end up doing that at the end of the show. And let's be honest, like who listens to a whole
Mhm.
podcast? So let's get this in at the beginning.
Yeah,
And
that's true actually. Yeah.
yeah, right.
I-
And
yeah.
we'll take it from there. So yeah, the floor's yours.
You know what? I'll talk slow because I myself like to listen to podcasts in about 1.5 times speed. So I'll give this one slightly. So my Instagram handle is Fascial Stretch Simon. So if you see me, that's my handle, Fascial Stretch Simon.
Perfect.
Awesome. That's the best place to get hold of you.
We'll put it in the show notes.
That is the best. Linktree is our favorite, right? Linktree. You can just go
Yeah.
there. You can find out all the info you need.
Click on the link in the bio
That's the
and
one.
you can
That's
learn
the one.
everything you need to know. So fascial stretch, Simon. Okay, so fascial stretch, Simon, please explain why you're fascial stretch Simon and not Simon Page, or I don't
That's
know,
true.
Super Simon.
Super Simon. Simon
That's right.
Says.
Well, you know what? I could have gone a few different ways with the branding, but very early in my career, I got into something called fascial stretch. So if you've heard of fascial stretch therapy or you've done a similar modality, fascial stretch, which has now changed names about half a dozen times since I took the course, is a modality of table strap assisted stretching. So it's a table-based modality. It's something that I learned probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. So I ended up taking the course, doing all 3 levels in very quick succession, and then I got invited to teach for the Canadian arm of Stretch to Win, which is the company that administers the course. And then I've been doing it for about, 5 or 6 years now, doing fascial stretch therapy. So that's kind of mainly what I do. That's kind of my specialism, I suppose, in some parts. It's not just the only thing I do, but it is something I'm well known for.
So let's break this down, right? Now I know our fit pros will be like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can like imagine the table, and I've probably witnessed people being pulled in different anyway. So, but for our consumers of fitness, right? Like when we think about fascial stretching, is this the same as like stretching our muscles? Like give us a bit more insight into exactly like the why behind it, like the purpose.
So, I mean, there's a few avenues you could take to explain it. But if we're talking to the consumer, um, if you can imagine that you are looking to tune your body in a couple of different ways. So if we're looking at the everyday, stressed out parent, business person, someone like yourselves maybe because you're managing your own business and you've got lots of things on the go. You've got kids, maybe kids, and you've got a very high stress environment. Well, we're going to tune your body down. That's the main thing. We're going to tune your body down. So it's romancing your nervous system to get you to relax and to get your body to accept new ranges of motion, new flexibility, or even to unlock potential within the body. So we do flowing movements, we do pain-free movement, and that's another really important factor when it comes to tuning the nervous system. It has to be pain-free. And for those people that maybe have, a very a body that maybe holds a lot of stress, we're going to bring it down to that kind of parasympathetic nervous system. We're going to get you to kind of relax. Because if you're very sympathetic and stressed, we know that your body actually tenses up and can hold on to a lot of stress. And the body is a very expressive outwardly of what you've got going on the inside. So if we can kind of unlock your body and we can get you to breathe and kind of down tune your body, a lot of times I find with professionals, they actually, they get more relaxed. Maybe they even have an emotional response to the treatment or the stretch session. And, that's how we find success within fascial stretch therapy.
I like this. Now, I'm very much from a yoga world, right? And like listening to hearing you speak, my mind instantly, kind of goes to a lot of yoga practices, breathing practices. I immediately kind of went to yin inspired yoga, which is all about connecting with the parasympathetic nervous system, getting very sub level with the body, right? So getting into deep connective tissue where we may store physical stress, emotional stress. So that was kind of my immediate connection with your description. I mean, did the studies, or I guess the influence, link into the world of yoga at all? Just
in some respects it did, because I know that Anne and Chris Frederick, Anne came up with the original system, Anne Frederick, and then her husband joined the company at some point, and they actually use lots of different modalities to kind of combine into one. So I know Thai yoga stretch might be a similar modality that people have seen, and somewhat similar, but it's table based. So it just allows us to get clients into positions which you wouldn't be able to do on the floor. And I believe it does, in some respects, the breathing elements, absolutely very similar to other yoga modalities. Same idea, exactly the same idea.
Right. But I guess rather than you personally manipulating yourself into positions and shapes, right, it's working with an individual. So I'm assuming that there's great opportunity there, right, to create shapes or get into positions with somebody helping you out, right, and using the leverage or the height of a table. So I see.
So one of the differences that fascial stretch gives is that it allows you to add traction to a stretch. So that's a key component with fascial stretch therapy. It's traction based as well. So essentially, by adding a little bit of traction for muscles that cross a joint, it can actually increase the range of motion exponentially. So you're actually adding more to the stretch. So something visual, and take this how you want. We call this the Frederick finger. It's actually my finger. But if you apply a little bit of traction and lift your finger. So first of all, I suppose I should give you the example of, we're going to do it. And for the people that can't see, I've got my finger pointing up, and Gareth is also doing it with his finger, and so is Nicky. Okay, so we're going to push the finger. Now, if you can see, I know you can't at home, but if you're watching the video online, there's not much flexibility in my finger. There's not much range of motion, right? Unless you've got hypermobility. But we're now going to add a little bit of traction. So you're going to pull the finger up slightly, and you're going to pull it into a new range, and you may get a little pop, but that's okay. And see if you don't stretch it too far though. Now let's see if we can push it a little bit further. See if we get an increase in range. Okay, get a little bit more, right? So just by applying a little bit of traction to the joint and the kind of tissue around the joints, so we've got traction and moving through a range of motion, you'll gain more flexibility that way. Okay, so just simple demonstration for those people that can't see at home, but it's just traction the finger up slightly and then just bring it into a new range. Please don't.
In our house, if you pull someone's finger, it means something different.
I'm glad that you can share that together.
Gareth says,
Dutch ovens are love, right?
He says, pull my finger, and I say no. But anyway,
I just do it to Harley instead.
Yeah, and just to be clear, like it pull my finger and he farts, right? Like, okay, that's the end of that story. That's immediately where I went. Sorry, Simon, fart jokes, but
that's okay. That's okay. That's what teachers do, right? That's what teachers do. It's always about fart joke. So
always.
But that's really cool, and that was a really quick demo. Yeah, and absolutely jump on our YouTube if you want to actually see what we were doing. But I mean, that's just a really quick way for people to see, right, and truly understand the influence that we have with that, because I think stretching, mobility, all of this stuff, it isn't sexy, and people just want to, like, I see some people jumping off the treadmill before it's even stopped at the gym, right? Like, I done my workout,
Yeah.
Quick go.
beep,
Yeah.
beep, beep, right? Yeah, I have to go grab my thing to go.
Yeah, we live in this time where, you know, I think we all did it at some point in our fitness journey where we probably spent half an hour rolling out on the mats with a foam roller, doing about half a dozen stretches just before we even worked out, right? And you've probably all seen someone in the gym that's, you know, bright red face, forcing the stretch, contorting themselves into different positions. But what we really know now is that's probably the least effective way to stretch, right? And there's a difference before you work out, there's a difference after you work out and how you stretch. There's different modalities, but the best way to stretch is when your body's most accepting of the stretch. And you kind of have to know your why before you do it. Is it a pre-workout stretch, so it's got to be dynamic? Or is it a post-workout stretch where it's got to be a little bit more static and you want to hold the stretch for a little bit longer? Now, I know for the fitness pros, you're like, yeah, that's obvious. But for the consumer, it's obviously something they may not know. It may be, you know, a point of confusion for some, because you probably heard someone say, well, you got to stretch before you do your exercise. You've got to stretch after you exercise. But what does that look like for everyone, right?
Yeah, that's
Depends on
a really good point. And funny enough, I commented on something I saw, and I won't name any names, but someone had made a post that I saw, and, you know, being a giving fitness professional, I wanted to share with someone. I was like, I'm going to just comment and just see kind of, you know, and I'll give everybody an overview of the post. It was something along the lines of, I just get to the end of the workout and I just hate it. I hate everything about stretching. It's the worst bit and I don't want to do it and I'm forcing myself. And I kind of commented and said, well, what are you trying to gain from it? First of all, like, I get that you don't want to do it, but typically if you don't want to do something, it's not going to be very productive. So, and the person was like, oh, I just kind of I want to get a bit more flexibility and mobility through my hips to help in my, you know, help with my squats in everyday life. And I was like, great, probably stop post-workout stretching then, because you're not getting what you want from it anyway, and you don't want to do it. So there's probably other ways to do it, right? And that's the whole thing, is sometimes we can't feel like people feel like they have to. And I'm like, you don't have to. And you know, to your point, Simon, it's not always beneficial to what people think it is. It's not going to, you know, we're really just bringing the muscle back to its original length. And, you know, I guess arguably, we could go on about this forever, but arguably it's actually not benefiting you whatsoever. And if actually it could be not helping your recovery. So yeah, it's important to understand that. And that's obviously where a professional is your friend and can point you in the right direction.
I think it's also worth adding that you never really want to put something in someone's routine that they're going to be low on compliance with, because if it's the thing they hate the most, they're never going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead them to hate doing something, which again will never lead them to carry on with the process. So if it's something you don't want to do, we have to find something else that's going to work for you, which might not be stretching, right?
Yeah.
That's true. And you could argue, like, maybe this is that, like you were saying, Simon, maybe this is the great opportunity to put the dynamic mobility stretch at the beginning of the workout. Let's open up the hips. Let's get some heat and mobility to the shoulders so you can actually get under that bar.
Yep. That's actually a really good point. Is that something that, you know, typically when we look at stretching, you know, let's talk about our typical kind of muscular stretches, and then, you know, that static style stretch is something we wouldn't advise definitely pre-lifting, because the last thing we want to do is pull that muscle out to its full length and then try and contract it. Is fascial stretch therapy something that you typically would use as a prep for someone if it was like a sporting activity or, you know, even a workout? Is there any time where that would be beneficial?
Yeah, so I mean, certain populations within certain sports are going to benefit heavily from doing stretching, like fascial stretch therapy. But again, the difference is going to be within the way that you conduct the treatment or the session. It's a little bit more dynamic. It's not as deep. It's a little bit more rapid. So we're trying to increase their nervous system the other way. We've gone parasympathetic before. Now we're into the sympathetic nervous system. Now we're kind of a little bit faster, you know, higher pace. And also, some populations do not benefit from stretching. Put it that way. So if you're someone who is a strength athlete, guess what? I'm probably not going to stretch you. Yeah, probably not going to stretch you, because, you know, that kind of population, they're not going to do well when they're in the middle of a training block and suddenly have a new range of motion. That's probably the worst thing you could do for that person. Likewise, if you're someone that has hypermobility, guess what? You're not going to stretch. You're probably going to do a little bit more stability work. And if I have you on the table, it's going to be a lot more what we refer to as PNF, or, well, I'm not going to give the long word, but if you want, I can. Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's a mouthful, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious kind of word, right? But it basically means that within a certain range, we're going to press against a force that's applied, and then it's kind of creates this reciprocal, muscular action in the muscle. So it just lets us train your brain, or at least the proprioception within that joint range, to help you gain and kind of solidify that range. We say owning the range within kind of the personal training world, right? It's like if you're in a new range and you can't control it, you don't own it yet. So if you've got a new flexibility, you've got to train the brain, train the nervous system to accept it. And then that could look like, some isometrics. So holding that position, it could be training the brain with a weight in that range. And that just kind of helps lock it in.
Yeah.
Got it. Mobility, stability, right? Like you gotta, like that.
So true. And
mobility is always followed by stability, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's, definitely the way the industry's leaning, right? Like you said, it's all well and good having passive, if you have passive flexibility, but I think a lot of studies and research is showing us that a lot of that is not really conditional on how much we stretch anyway, right? Whereas the mobility and owning that range is such an important part. I want to just go back to something really quickly, because I think this is important for anyone listening today, fitness professionals, particularly fitness consumers. We touched a little bit on nervous system, and this is something I think people confuse. So I want to be clear, when you said something about we spoke about parasympathetic nervous system and tuning the body down. I think people would have probably heard that the nervous system being either rest and digest or fight and flight. So just to clarify, the parasympathetic nervous system being that kind of resting state, that digest, right, where we're calm, like you mentioned, and then the opposite. So if somebody is listening and thinking, how do I get ready for exercise? We're trying to dial up your sympathetic nervous system, which is going to get us ready to lift a weight, go for a run, whatever it might be. So yeah, that's why we don't typically leap out of bed, for example, and go straight into our deadlift PR or a sprint.
I just don't leap out of bed.
Well, yeah,
I'm still over there. I'm in the other one.
You get pushed out of bed, I bet. Gareth's pushing you out of bed.
Up by a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And rocks and dolls and anyways.
Oh yes. Yes, no, super interesting. And the mobility thing is something that's huge. We're seeing a lot of interest in that area, kind of functional mobility and movement, and kind of teaching people, like you said, to own those ranges and build those. Because so many people, like we said, right, I want to stretch to get better at my thing, and I'm like, there's probably better ways, right? Better ways to spend your time. So I like that. I know you'd mentioned about kind of stress, like you're busy professionals, you're busy parents, people that are under a lot of stress and their fascia. I love getting technical, so hopefully this will appeal to everyone listening, is what actually happens in the fascia specifically, because obviously we understand what stress does to our body, and people might get headaches, and they might get fatigue, and they might feel many different things. But how does the fascia actually physically get affected by those high stress moments or periods of life?
That is a good question. I mean, to give the answer from my perspective, because, fascia is kind of the interweaving material between all of our muscle fibers and our tendons and ligaments and so on. It kind of threads. It's one of the bigger organs in the body besides the skin. And it kind of, it's used to pass signals along, it hydrates the body. So again, touches everything. And if you think about it, the body outwardly reflects what happens, within our mind, and absorbs our experiences, and we hold a lot of tension within the body, right? So the baggage that we carry through life, our experiences, scar tissue is a really good example. So if you have a scar on your body, and maybe it's on your hand or your leg, and you try and move it, normally if they've been there a while, they're quite solid. So if you think about someone that maybe have a C-section scar, that's a common one that we deal with quite regularly. Sometimes if you don't move regularly, that kind of mats down, kind of roots down to the body. And that's that fascial tissue getting all tied up. Now, how that would react in the body is if you might not be able to see my shirt at home, but if you can imagine, if I have if I pull the corner of my shirt at the top near my shoulder, the bottom of my shirt pulls, right? And that's kind of like the fascial tissue, it moves. But if we have something that's kind of matted down, like a scar tissue, let's say it's that C-section scar I was talking about, around the bottom of my shirt, and I try and pull my shirt at the top, that's not going to move. It's not going to slide. And that's what fascia is kind of designed to do. It's, or at least developed to do. It slides across a surface and allows you to move freely. So when we refer to the nets or the lines of fascia, the meridians, our body is kind of set up in a way that we move in slings. So you might have heard that term before. Fitness professionals probably heard it. And if any of those kind of slings are out of alignment, maybe we're kind of tied down in certain areas, maybe our tissue isn't moving well, then functionally we're not going to move as well. Hopefully that was a good enough explanation for some people now.
Yeah, stress will, as you said, right? Stress will go to one place, but we're often we might think, oh, well, I'm stressed because my neck's tight, but it could be that could be affecting something else. I know for sure, like my right hip and my left shoulder, when one's acting up, the other one is 100% of the time. So there's all of those connections. So that makes sense. Would it also make sense that, thinking about the topic of kind of stress and how that affects so many people, a lot of that stress comes from probably our belief systems and what we've experienced through our life. So would I be right in thinking that trauma in not just physical trauma, but mental, emotional, also would have a massive impact on somebody's fascia as well?
For sure. So I regularly, when working with general population clients, especially if it's in a more controlled environment, it's not as easy when it's in a gym setting, so quite loud, but when you have the control variables, sometimes you get quite a physical, emotional reaction from someone experiencing that physical touch, because you've got to think that some people go through life without having a single positive touch experience in their life, and personal training and fascial stretch therapy, like it kind of bridges the gap a little bit with that personal element in personal training, right? And when you put your hands on someone in a positive way, when let's say they've had a trauma in their life or a bad experience with a partner, or they've had a bad experience, maybe they've had post-traumatic stress, or maybe they have been in the military service and experienced trauma. These are some scenarios that come away with, right? And you put your hands on a person and you give them a positive movement experience, that can unlock a lot, right? Even more so for professionals as well. If you have someone that's worked in a very stressful environment and every day is them going in to fight for something, maybe they're a CEO of a company, maybe they're in a position which is high stress, like sales, for example, and it's always very fight or flight, but they come in and you down tune them and they're like, well, I'm not used to feeling like this. I've spent the last 10 years feeling like super stressed. And, I go home and I battle with my wife because I'm that stressed all the time and that's how I live. And they go from being up here where they're super stressed to down here where they're just like, is this what it's like to feel like a normal person? I'm functional again, right?
Yeah.
That unlocks a lot within the body.
And I think that, that last scenario, Simon, is unfortunately a lot of the general public now. I think that's just the way, I just think that's the way it kind of works now, right? Like whether it's through your job or just trying to keep up with the day-to-day life and things that are demanded and asked of you. I think a lot of people spend a lot of their time in that heightened state. And you're right. And it's not until they come down that they actually realize that they were up there, right? And I think it probably takes a while for that to become the norm, right? And for that transition to smooth itself out a little bit, right? Like I see it a little bit at the end of yoga and meditation, right? Like we're winding down, we're going to lie still. Into a lot of people, that's the most terrifying thing of class, right? They can do all these, wonderful things with their bodies, but like just being still with their thoughts in quiet is actually the most challenging part of class. So I think trying to get more of that, I think, in people's lives is only but a good thing.
Slowing down. We could all slow down a bit, couldn't we?
I think we could all slow down.
Yeah.
A lot.
Absolutely.
All right. So we got the fascial training, the fascial, oh my goodness, I put my teeth back in. fascial stretching therapy where you are with an individual. So what could somebody do? And I know it's really hard because this is a podcast and I know we're typically demonstrating with our body, but what are some things that people could do to slow it down, to influence the fascia? What are some like takeaway, like maybe top 3 things that I could do like tonight to try and influence what's in my control, right, without relying on a trainer or a therapist?
So I think if you go back to the classic things, regular movement, hydration, etc., they play a part. But a big thing for most people is being very aware of where they are in terms of breathing at all times. So, for example, if you're in control, you'll be able to control your breathing. If you're stressed and you're breathing up here and you're kind of very short of breath, that tends to add tension to the body. But if you can control that element of long, deep inhales, exhales, and you can tune your own nervous system, that's undoubtedly going to carry over to when you're, walking, working out, doing things in everyday life. Even interactions with your partner, for example. If you know that you're entering a conversation with a partner and you are super duper stressed and you're up here again with your sympathetic nervous system, it's a good idea to help tune yourself down before you kind of have those interactions.
So breathing work. And would you suggest, because you mentioned like breathing high up in the chest, so kind of bringing the breath a bit further down the body, like
so diaphragmatic breathing. So breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breaths. These are all relevant things to some people. That can help them. And if you're not really sure what we mean by diaphragmatic breaths, it's a really, really quick and easy way to kind of get there, and that's just covering one nostril. Taking it, you can try it now if you want. Just cover one nostril. Take a deep breath in. It's kind of hard not to breathe into your belly at that point. You're forcing that air into your belly, right? The other way you can do it is you can, lay on your back, put some hands on, 2 hands on your stomach, breathe in, force your hands up to the ceiling, right? 2 really simple ways that you can do it. But again, you're just looking to get those like deep parasympathetic breaths, sympathetic breaths in, so that you can have that down regulation effect.
Yeah, breathing is I'm obsessed right now with learning about breathing. It's right up there in my I go on these down these tunnels of obsession on things when I hear something. But I'm sure the listeners have heard this already, but I listened to Breathe by James and Esther recently. And got a little obsessed with that. But obviously talk a lot about the nervous system and discuss a lot about, kind of nasal breath, diaphragmatic breathing, and the roots in it, right? And what's funny I found about breathing is that, obviously you spoke about it from a kind of down regulating your body and, fascia and all the other things it impacts. And what made me laugh is that we hear about it a lot, but it's a very, very old practice. And like you said, right, when fascial stretch therapy was developed, it was all pulled from these many things. And the yogis and such like have been doing it for thousands of years.
Thousands of years, man. They invented everything we're doing, right? Like it's like fashion, right? Like I think we're on the 27th millionth time that people are wearing flares and ripped jeans again, right? But it's kind of true. Like it originated somewhere. But I think, just as science increases and medicine increases, we just learn how to understand it better, right? And communicate it better. So I think it's wonderful that we just have all these different modalities available now, right? To help individuals live just a healthy lifestyle. I kind of took a break there because I didn't want to use the word fit, because that word doesn't really mean anything, but just like a healthy, mindful lifestyle. And you kind of mentioned being pain-free, Simon, right? Like moving in pain-free ways. And really honoring your body. And I think now, as we get more intelligent with what's available to us and what our bodies can't do, I feel like that's a lot more of a focus for people, generally speaking.
I agree. I think living pain-free and being aware that living in pain is not normal, right? I think some people just accept it as a reality. I mean, I can tell you about my own experience because my father actually has a disability. So he has lived his whole life knowing only pain, right? Since his early 20s. So being very aware and sympathetic myself to people in pain. And one of the reasons I actually got into fascial stretch therapy was my sympathy to people that have pain, is that it's not a normal experience, but pain is subjective. So you can't live someone else's pain. You're not really aware of what their 10 is compared to your 1, right? You know, two people experience pain in different ways. So you have to be leading with care, you know, showing people that you're understanding. And you know, pain is experienced different by everyone, whether it's physical or emotional. And that's the power that we have as a fitness professional, is we can kind of help them with that, because our movement-based expertise, as long as that's how we can help them, is what's going to fix their issue.
Yeah, normalizing moving and moving better, just the same way as I think, you know, we as a, I don't know if generation's the right word, but you know, newer generations, if you like, are doing a great job of normalizing, you know, therapy if you've got emotional pain, right?
Yeah, for sure.
In the same
Yeah.
way, like movement, like, you know, trainers and therapists and anyone that specializes in anything to do with the physical way the body moves, just we all need to do a better job of normalizing that, right? Like you shouldn't be in pain all the time. You should be able to move and function
Oh,
and
for
get through
sure.
your day, right?
I think this generation is much better at preventative healthcare, or at least taking care. You know, as trainers, we are in the preventative healthcare, you know, field, right? It's not reactive healthcare, which is traditional medicine.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, and the best investment that someone can make is in preventative healthcare.
Yeah. If we could package that up and sell it, we'd be billionaires.
Geniuses.
All of us.
We're trying. We're trying. Okay.
It's so true. If we could, you know, if we could be attuned to our emotions, and we could move better, and we could breathe well, and we could also nourish our bodies really well, I think everyone would be on a bit of a winning path there in life, right? It's huge. It's huge. Love it.
So with your clients, Simon, you know, knowing that you do the fascial stretch therapy and you also do quotation marks regular PT, you know, is this something that, you know, that you've applied into regular training sessions? Like I'm curious to know, like, if the two overlap or if it's completely separate, or, you know, if this is kind of the route to some of your success, right? Like we spoke a little bit before we started recording about, you know, your success in the industry, the longevity of career, you know, your high retention rates, but also, you know, just the success of the individuals. So is it because there's this real crossover of preventative as well as, you know, working with what comes up in the moment? Like help us kind of understand that a little bit.
I think I probably echo someone that you've had on before, Chris Fudge, in the fact that you know, you have to be a very good generalist. So whilst I'm known for doing that, it's just part of what I do. It's just one of the hats that I have that I use to get results from clients. Because I think if you just concentrate yourself in one area, it doesn't open you up to a breadth of experience. So I use it as a tool. It's something in my toolbox to use, but it's not the thing that's going to help every single client. Not every client's going to need stretching on a session by session basis, you know. So you have to tailor your approach based on the person that's in front of you. Sometimes they need it, often they don't. But if it's there, you know, if they need it, it's there to use.
I think that's really great advice, because I've seen, as I think we all have in our multiple years of experience, you know, some trainers or some fitness professionals like, no, this is the only way, and this is the only way we're going to train, and we're going to do this, and one size fits all. And you know, and I think it's great to have your focuses and I guess your personal preferences, but when it comes to working with clients, you know, I think we've got to be well-rounded individuals, right? And really seek to understand what that person needs. So, you know, I love that it's part of what you do, and you can kind of add it in just to, you know, those core I guess expertise levels that we should have as trainers. So I'm curious then, you know, is there anything else that you're really passionate about in the world of fitness?
Well, I think we know that I really enjoy teaching. I think
Yes.
we both know that, you know, I think that's what you're leaning towards, right? So I did spend a few years teaching this course, which is why I have, you know, strong ties to it. But I also really enjoy teaching fitness professionals to be fitness professionals. So, you know, recently started working for CanFit Pro, also taught the curriculum through Good Life as well. You know, currently do. I actually finished the course this afternoon, believe it or not. So just come off the back of that before I'm speaking to yourselves. Yeah, so my thing right now is giving back to the community, right? It's helping fitness professionals be better, using my experience and my skills to better level up future personal trainers.
And I believe that can also help you become better at what you do, right? Like
100, yeah, 100%, 100%.
it's really quite a magical thing when you go in with that view of helping people and getting them started in their career. And it's amazing what you then receive back, right? And how that makes you want to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, it definitely does that. And, you know, from my experience of education, it's the same. You never learn so much about something you thought you knew a lot about, like until you teach other professionals that have an opinion.
Lots of
And
opinion.
yeah, and you share it, but then someone says, oh, I don't understand, or oh, I tried to teach that to someone and this happened and this is my experience. And then you walk away with, like, you know, every time I teach I taught a TRX course just at the back end of last year, and something I'd been teaching the same way for 10 years, and someone inadvertently showed me another way to do it, and I was like, or another way to explain it, and I was like, well, I'm stealing that, and took it away and taught it like the next day.
Borrowing.
I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely picked up a new. And you don't learn that stuff unless you're in those environments, because we spend our time teaching consumers, and you typically don't learn those types of things from teaching consumers. You only learn them when you teach other professionals.
That's right. Yeah, you know, our best experience, we've borrowed everything that we know, right, as fitness professionals. Everything we've learned is off other people, really. So we are just the conduit to give that information to other people in a slightly better presented and packaged way, using our own experience. So yeah, I agree with you. I rely heavily on other people to show me. Sometimes I walk around the gym, I'm like, what is that exercise that person's doing? And I'm like deconstructing it in my mind. I'm like, actually, that's genius. I'm going to do that with a client. That's really good. That would work in a program. So yeah, I get what you're saying there, Gareth.
Yeah, you have to be hyper aware, watching everything everyone does and everything they say in the industry, and that's why spending so much time in, you know, just in gyms in general, right, for so many years, all of us, is you pick up so much from those environments. And I think I'll go back to something that I think is just kind of ringing around in my brain a little bit, that you mentioned, that being that kind of generalist, and you mentioned Chris, so shout out to Chris because he's incredible, and I had the pleasure of talking to him on the show. This is something that Chris does really well. Like, he has his passions and his real areas of knowledge, but we had a really good conversation on his podcast actually a while back about how we can kind of the world of, and what we talked about was the world of group fitness and personal training kind of supporting each other. And we had this conversation, and what I loved about, you know, talking to Chris and talking to many other people is that he can be very, or all of us, you know, in this circle we're talking about, can be very kind of agnostic about their approach, right? Is that, yes, there's some science, right? Yes, there's primal movement patterns we've all been doing for millions of years. We talk about being, and in nutrition and within nutrition coaching, I talk a lot about being nutritionally agnostic, because there's some science that's pretty accurate and it's been around for a long time. And then there's many ways, right? And people always come to me, they're like, well, if I coach with you on nutrition, are you going to make me do this or make me do that? I'm like, nope. Like, tell me what you like doing, and we'll just make it work to get you where you want to be. And that's the key, right? Is being agnostic and saying, this person might, like for us, they might want to come and work out in a group with us online, but they might not. And that's okay, right? And saying, hey, let's send you off to someone in person, or let's find you another option that works for you. And I think if it's fitness professionals, and any fitness professionals listening, is if you can be a little bit more kind of, hey, there's lots of ways of getting there. We're all trying to take people in the same direction. It would probably harmonize everything we're doing. And I would, a bit of a wild statement, but I think we would attract more people into the industry if we approached it with that mindset.
Yeah, I agree. I love what you're saying there. And there's lots of ways to unpack even what you said there as well, because it's kind of like, well, we're in this rapidly developing industry where there's something new all the time. There's new trends, there's new experience, new people bringing new ideas. You know, we have the market that's always polarized on some level, where someone's saying something at this end of the market and someone's saying the opposite at the end. You know,
Always.
full range of motion, partial range of motion, like, you know, stretching, no stretching. But the industry is so big and so diverse that if we really reflected on it, there's a place for everyone. You know, no matter what you do, it's so big. You know, in the area that I work in, there's at least 3 or 4 gyms opposite ours. You know, within at least a quarter of a mile. You know, a few kilometers from our gym. And I know there's other trainers there, and I work with other trainers in my gym. But you know, everyone has something to offer. And you're going to find, whether you're a client or a personal trainer, you're going to have seasons within that fitness, within that life cycle of a client, where their needs now are not going to be the same in a couple of years' time. And if they train with me now, but then they decide to train with another trainer or go away to do another fitness experience, which does happen because tastes change, right? What a client needs from their fitness professional is going to be different. Maybe they want to do a boot camp, and maybe they want to go and do yoga, maybe they want to do CrossFit, maybe they want to do a boxing camp, maybe they need someone with the same life experience as them, because I'm not, let's say, you know, this isn't someone I work, but let's say I'm not a female, I've never had a kid, I can't experience what they would have experienced postpartum, let's say, and maybe they want someone that has that experience. Well, you know what? I'm not precious enough to say, don't do it. I'm going to say, do it, because a mature fitness professional will own the fact that they're not, you know, they're not for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
Words of wisdom. And the moment you let that go, right, you kind of drop that ego and understand it's not about you, it's all about them. It's the moment you make the right decision. You know, and I think you kind of touched on that a little bit earlier about meeting the person where they're at, right? And giving the right thing at the right time in their programming, when it's time to say goodbye, right? When it's time to pass on to somebody new, you know, and we don't have to be at competition with each other. You know, I think there's a way for us all to play in the sandbox, right? And get people what they need. But I think this also talks a lot to the career of a fitness professional, which we spoke about very briefly just a moment ago, which is having different tools in your toolbox, right? So we've all got like 5 gig going on at the same time as fit pros, because that's just how we roll. But because there's so much in our industry that's interesting, right? There's so much that like captivates you and you want to go down. I think that you were talking about going down the tunnels a little bit earlier, right? And so we've got like this bit over here where I do fascial stretch, this bit over here where I do PT. I got this bit over here, you know, where I do group fitness, because we can offer so much by really diversifying. So I think if you're a fit pro and you're listening, like, it's okay to explore multiple avenues at once. That's number one. And number two, it's okay to let your clients go or refer on or do something different if your skill set is no longer serving them. Because you know what, and we spoke about retention too, it loops back around. Because you know what, that person will trust you forever and ever, because you've just built great rapport and you've worked with integrity, and that will just come back to you tenfold. Who knows, 5 years down the line.
Yeah. Oh yes. So I'd love to, obviously we spoke about your education, etc., and you know, your work as a PT, and you know, all those other things that kind of come up for you. And it's something that I was just thinking when you were talking about the kind of generalist thing, and you know, where to kind of position yourself. I'd love to just for you to share a little bit, because I find this very interesting as a fitness professional and never been anything else. You touched on a few things that were kind of key in marketing, and I know that you had a background that's a little bit that wasn't fitness. And what fascinates me was how did that come about as an interesting story?
Yeah. So I think I sometimes tell this in different ways, but the crux of it is I didn't start off in fitness. You know, I came from a business background. I worked in recruitment for a few years. Then I was in a company that specialized in marketing recruitment. You know, before then I moved to Canada, and then I was like, you know, should I go and do recruitment again, or should I do something else? And it just a couple of things just didn't click with me, and I was like, well, do I want to do this forever, or do I want to do something where I'm a lot more fulfilled? And I kind of had that moment that a lot of people have, where they're like, you know what, I really don't. You know, the money was great, but I can leave that behind because I really want to be self-fulfilled and love what I do every day.
Mm.
And you know, I found personal training because I, like many people, I enjoyed working out. You know, I've been an athlete when I was younger. You know, played rugby at different levels, and was like, you know what, I'd really like to be able to do that every day and work with people, because people was what I really enjoyed in my last line of work. So I ended up moving to personal training and didn't look back. And you know, it's a long day, but I tell you what, it's not work. It's not
Yeah.
work. If you really enjoy what you do, it's really not work at all. So I that's how I got into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a, and we hear it so often, right, in the world of health and fitness. And I wonder whether, you know, just to tie that back into kind of what we've been talking about today, and which is why I kind of brought it up, is when you, and you said you enjoyed working with people when you were in recruitment and business and marketing, but wanted to be a bit more fulfilled. How did it change your kind of mental and emotional state? Obviously physically you were, you know, you
Mm.
were working out anyway, but did it change that for you when you leaned towards something that was more fulfilling and more kind of purpose driven for you?
Certainly felt more fulfilled. Very often I find in previous jobs that I did within that field, you know, I might enter like a downward spiral sometimes where I was like, I don't, you know, I don't feel like I'm successful. I don't know how to get out of this like pit that I'm in with myself and how I feel about this job. And I'm not sure where I'm going. And you feel a little bit lost. But you know, I think that's a lot of people when they're in their like 20s to late, you know, 20s. They're really not sure where they're going with their life. But then you know, like every cell in our body gets replaced every 7 years. We've got the right to reinvent ourselves, right? Everyone has that desire that they want to leave their hometown, do something different. You know, look at us three. We're British, but we're in Canada, right? So I was like, you know what? I deserve to be able to do this for myself. And I was like, I'm going to take all my experience, boil it down, and then apply it to a new industry. So that's what I did. I took all of that experience, you know, all that travel I'd done over the years, all that you know, FaceTime with people, which is, you know, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you know, people by people, right? And I moved into personal training, and I thought, you know, let's make a go of this because this is what I think I'm going to love to do.
That's powerful, and you know we've talked about how you know you gotta sleep and breathe and fascial stretch and work out and manage your stress, but the reality I think that we can all talk to, and you know, and I'm sure we'll all agree we're very fortunate to do something we love every day, but lean into things that you love, lean into things that are purposeful, that fulfill you.
Mm.
And yes, it can be, you know, you mentioned, Simon, about how you had to step away a little bit from maybe the higher income and having, well, I've got this skill set, how is this going to get me a job doing something else? But you can make that work. And does it take sacrifice? Yes, but
Mm.
the chance to do something fulfilling and purpose driven will help you manage a lot of that stretch. Maybe you won't need a fascial stretch therapist or a nutrition coach, because you'll change your direction, you'll change your jobs, and you'll be just fine. So maybe that's another way, another tool in the toolbox, right?
But how cool that you could kind of merge your experiences together, right? And just make something beautiful. Like that's a great story. It's a great win. I love it.
Yeah, it's huge. Well, I think we're going to just to wrap up the show. And what I'd like to do first, though, before we do that, is just hand the mic back over to you, Simon. To just anything else you want to share, any last little words of wisdom? Do you have any words of wisdom? Do you have anything you
Words
want
of
to?
wisdom.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what can I say? Well, obviously, thank you for having me on.
Pleasure.
Uh, I would also say that to anybody that's looking to get started in personal training, you know, anyone that's listening is like maybe dipping their toe in that, you know, it doesn't matter about your level of experience. The consumer doesn't worry about that, right? A great analogy I heard the other day was, you know, when your house is on fire and the fire service turns up, you're not worried about how qualified the firefighter is. that's going to put your house out. You just want them to put the fire out, right? So if you are a client and you're not sure, or you're a personal trainer and you're worried about the level of experience, and you're not sure how to engage with the client, they're not worried about that. Their house is on fire right now. They need you to rescue them. Okay. So just jump right in, because you're the one that's going to help save their life.
Love that. That's a great place to wrap up the show. Well, it is a pleasure. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time, your energy. We always appreciate that, as does I'm sure everyone listening as well. And I guess last thank you goes to everyone that's tuned in and listened to the show today. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got some great takeaways. And as always, if you did, please share the episode with someone you love and care about, someone that would get a lot from this. Maybe someone that's got some fascial issues that needs some assistance or some training, or other fitness professionals,
or a new job.
Yeah, there's lots of takeaways today, lots of career advice. So yes, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we will catch you on the next episode.